Hello there, welcome back to my channel. It's so good to have you here once again. Yeah, and as usual I have something very exciting for you today. Yes, and as you see the title, are the leaders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church aware of their false doctrines? Right? Are the leaders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church aware of their false doctrines? And the answer to that is yes. Right? Now, what I'm going to do in this video is that I'm going to provide for you evidences. You understand? That shows that the leaders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, they are aware of the false doctrines, right? And what I'm going to do, or how I'm going to find the facts, is that I'm going to show you a few video clips, you understand, as well as some pictures that contain information on it, which will show you that without a shadow of a doubt, they are aware of the false doctrine. But the problem is that they can't do anything about it. You understand? If they should come to the church and say publicly from the general conference level, right? If they are to admit this, that the doctrines are false, then there would be no more Seventh-day Adventist church. Many of the members would leave right away, and the numbers would diminish. I highly doubt that there would be much Seventh-day Adventists remaining in the church. You understand? So the church would not be anymore, and so they are not going to take that risk. And so as a result, what they do is to push it under the mug and to carry on with the false doctrine. There are some of them in there are hoping to actually see a change where the teachings are concerned. But how they intend to effect change is due to a gradual, slow process, you understand, by subtly introducing evangelical teachings, you understand? And then with the hopes that one day there will become a time when the false doctrines will be totally eradicated, or they'll reach a stage where they'll be able to say openly, because the people's mind would be somewhat prepared. You understand? Due to the gradual change over time, their mind would be prepared to accept the truth. So this is what they're hoping, you understand? That perhaps 20, 30 years from now, they'll be able to actually change the teachings completely. You understand? But as it is now, they are not going to come openly and say, yes, it's false. And any pastor who dare tries to do that, they are going to lose their jobs instantly, and that is something that they don't want. They understand the reputation and the money, the nice retirement that awaits them is too far much of a good bargain to lose. You understand? For the truth's sake, it's just simply not worthy for them. You understand? Now, with that being said, I'm going to show you the evidences, so check it out.
So as you know, I'm there at NC now studying, and persons are sacrificing so much to send me to school. So I employ myself to the books. Okay. I study hard, get good grades, and I began doing Greek a few semesters back. So it helps me to delve into the scriptures much better.
Okay.
And as I continue to learn under the illustrious professors we have there,
yes.
hermeneutics, exegesis, Greek, and how to critically think and analyze scripture, I start to pick up a lot of flaws with the teachings of Adventism.
So right there in the classes?
For me, that's how I start in the classes. And because I'm so studious, I read wide as I'm out of the classroom. I'm consistently studying my Bible. I'm consistently in the Greek.
Okay.
And as I begin to seek to employ the tools that are given to me, I begin to realize all of these issues. And when I raise questions in class, it's always, Thunder, we know you're a very brilliant young man. You can be a fine minister in the church, but you have to basically ignore these things and preach what the church teach.
That's what the professors are telling you?
That's what the professors and the leaders,
yes.
I can face them right now, Ian, and repeat the same thing that I'm repeating.
Just preach
what the church teach. I will be paid from the faithful tithe of the members to preach what the church teach. And if I find anything different, I need to bury it deep within me. Don't even share it with my wife. Don't let it come out. I must preach the 28 fundamental beliefs of the Adventist church. And for me, that's very troubling, because you cannot be giving me the tools and educating me to critically think, to teach the truths of Scripture, And when I find there's a problem with what you believe,
You're being asked to
and
subordinate all
I
that
seek
to the organization.
to be helped with these issues, all I'm being told is, hey, forget about it. Preach what the church teach. That's what you're going to be paid for. I find that very unethical, and
Yes, it is.
it's difficult for
That
me to
is
deal
so.
with mentally.
For me, not the church. And the Seventh-day Adventist Church, like all other Christian denominations, has its strengths and its weaknesses. And one of the weaknesses, which I will elaborate on, of the Seventh-day Adventist Church is that God has blessed the church with many blessings in its beginning days, and in some of these areas, the church has refused to grow and to evolve and to accept the scholarship that many of the scholars are quietly trying to nudge the church along. Having had the opportunity to study the Sabbath, I was led through different circumstances and situations to study the issue of the Sabbath, because as a Seventh-day Adventist, you will question every other subject, but not the Sabbath.
That's true.
That is over finished with,
yes, true.
packaged,
That's true.
and we have no thoughts about it. But I'd just like to invite my fellow Adventist Christian, my members, please, in the name of Jesus, just step back and take another look. Because there is so many things there that the Lord has been trying to communicate to us. And you
Dr. Raymond Cottrell, who had just retired, gave another Adventist forum. This was in San Diego. And he was on the committee that wrote the SDA Bible commentary. And because he was the denomination's best Hebrew scholar, their #1 Hebrew scholar, he was assigned to write on Daniel. Well, he got to Daniel 8:14, and he could not get Adventist interpretation out of Daniel 8:14. So he went to Elder Lowe, who was in charge of the committee, and then the two of them went to R.R. Figure, who was the General Conference president at the time. And they said, look, we can't get Adventist theology out of Daniel 8, and that's the pillar of the Adventist church. Well, Figure said, you get the best minds of Adventism, and you form a super secret committee, and you work on this problem until it's solved. So they did. They got the best minds of Adventism, and the men are listed in my book, Cultic Doctrine. And they worked on it for 5 years and realized they could not biblically support it. So they didn't know what to do. If we say it's not biblical, then that blows the church up. And if we say it is, we're lying. So they finally disbanded and left no minutes, as if they'd never met. And they were instructed to tell the pastors to continue to teach the investigative judgment based on traditional assumptions. Well, so that was the second thing. I knew it was wrong. I knew they knew it was wrong, and it tried to cover it up. Then the next thing that happened was, in the mail one day, I got a set of either 5 or 6 long cassette tapes from Dr. Zane Keim. He was a medical doctor, a friend of mine. And I did not ask for them. And what happened was that Walter Ray, who was a pastor I'd known in Southern California, and I think you may have his book there.
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now. Here it is.
Yeah, Walter Ray, it's a book, White Line. By the way, we have this on our website. Anyway, he was really strong believer in Ellen White, and he wrote a lot of books summarizing some of the quotes from Ellen White. I'll set this down.
Yes.
Anyway, and he was reading some old books on the life of Christ, and suddenly he realized, man, that sure sounds like Ellen White. And so he went and said, oh, that's almost like Ellen White says. So that piqued his interest. He got a copy of all the books that Ellen White had in her library and tried to find them. And lo and behold, he found that Ellen White plagiarized huge amounts of material.
And that's what this book
Documents.
is all about. He
Right.
documents everything in this book called The White Lie from the research you're referring to right now.
Exactly, exactly. Now, the way she plagiarized, and she had some secretaries that helped her, they would change a word here, or change a word there, put in a synonym or something else that would sound the same, but change it so it wouldn't be quite as evident. So it was deceptive plagiarism, if you will. Anyway, he found that she had plagiarized huge amounts in her books, even in her testimonies to individual people. Sometimes even her dreams that she had were quotes from some books. And even in places where she said the angel, and she would quote, she had an angel that supposedly spoke to her. She claimed to have 2,000 visions and so on. And often she says, I was shown, you know, like the angel of God told her, and then she'd quote something. And lo and behold, even those I was shown statements often were from some other author.
So basically, the angels that Ellen White was talking to were really these other authors that had written books that were in her library.
Yeah, you might say that. Now, she's written a lot of good things, too. And she quotes from some good authors at times. Okay. So those are three things. I knew I couldn't trust Ellen White anymore. I knew the Adventist Church, their investigative judgment was wrong. And I knew they knew it was wrong. So about this time, Adventism, all this stuff started to leak out in the Adventist Church, and there was a tremendous underground. People were discussing it, and I was pastor of the Watsonville Church, and people were asking me about my research and so on. And Dr. Raymond Cottrell's tape, were out, okay, and I had some very professional PhD type and MD elders on my church board. So I felt free to give it to them and say, look, let's consider this. Because I had always thought that truth was the hallmark of Adventism. And I've always sought for truth. I mean, I always want to be a truth seeker. Well, the quote hit the fan about that time. I got a call from the conference president. He wanted to talk to me. And he said, I understand you shared all this. Anyway, to make a long story short, I told him why I could not preach the investigative judgment. And he says, well, you got to do it. And I said, I can't unless you can show me how to do it. Well, he had me meet with two people, Harold West, who was a ministerial secretary, like the pastor over the pastors, and Dr. Zamora, who pastored a large Adventist church in the San Jose area. He had been at the Glacier View trial, and he had read that 1,000-page manuscript, too. So we met for 4 hours. It was recorded. They never gave me a copy, and I know it'll never be released, because both of them admitted in private that Daniel 8 probably referred to Antiochus Epiphanes. We should not use Ellen White for doctrine. And there was no problem with, 2 weeks later, about a camp meeting, they were up in front quoting Ellen White, promoting the same Adventist. And I began to lose faith in the personnel of Adventism. One day, Harold West knew I was struggling. He took me aside, and it was a camp meeting. He took me for a walk. He said, Dale, let's go for a walk. I want to talk to you. So we wanted to go for a walk where nobody could hear us. And he said, Dale, we both know the doctrine's wrong. It's not our fault. We can't do anything about it. Look at the church as your employer and do what you can with a clear conscience and don't make any waves, and you'll be fine. It's good retirement here. And I said, Harold, God called me to teach the truth of the gospel. Maybe I'm in the wrong denomination. Well, the day came when we resigned. We had to. At the time, we had just built a new house, and that was in the 80s. Our first loan was 12%. Our second was 18%. My wife was employed at the church. She was an evangelistic Bible worker like my grandmother. We thought we'd probably lose our house. We didn't. The Lord has provided.
Merits alone are the only issue in the judgment. Have we laid hold of them by faith?
All right. What in brief are the reasons that you have found does not support that original interpretation?
John, I am not an original thinker in this area. The things I am saying have been said by various men in the church for for nearly a century.
Okay, give us some of the things that they've been saying that would be solid evidence.
Right. The major thing is this. There's only one place in the New Testament that speaks of the meaning of the two apartments of the Jewish sanctuary. That's Hebrews 9. There's only one place in the New Testament that discusses the cleansing of the heavenly sanctuary. That's Hebrews 9. There's only one part in the New Testament that explains in detail the meaning of the antitypical Day of Atonement when the high priest went to the most holy place. That's Hebrews 9. This chapter embarrasses Seventh-day Adventists no end. Of course, I'm generalising. The scholars have known what I said for decades. This doctrine has not been taught at our university for decades.
What have the scholars known all of these years?
Once again, the John Ankerberg Show, Box 8977, Chattanooga, Tennessee, 37411.
What about this thing, too, that the group is the exclusive group, the exclusive community in Christendom to witness to Christ, the remnant?
This is based on very poor exegesis. Revelation 12:17 is speaking about a remnant yet to be developed. Questions on Doctrine said that all faithful Christians are potential members of that remnant. But most small religious groups have a tendency to an inferiority complex which is compensated for by some extravagant claims. Adventists have been guilty in that area. But the things that Walter has just said do fit many parts of North America, but it shouldn't be thought that this necessarily fits the whole world field. I know hundreds of ministers, I've trained hundreds of ministers in part, and they do know the gospel and they do speak of Jesus. What Walter says is true in many areas. It's not necessarily true of all of Adventism.
The problem that I have noticed in preparing for this program before you men arrived was to meet with men in this area, and I'm not going to name names because they felt they could lose their job. They know the gospel.
Yes.
They're afraid to say it.
Thousands of Adventist ministers know the gospel, and many of the laity know the gospel.
In Australia, you taught most of the guys that are in the clergy there.
In Australia, yeah.
Okay, taking all of this, what hope do you see for the future?
If the church will be honest to God and get down the biblical evidence, there's no basis for 1844 as a biblical datum. The scholars know it. The church needs to admit it. If the church will be honest to God, God will bless the church. It has much to offer the Christian world.
If the denomination takes the next step and hardens up the line and makes Ellen G. White an extra scriptural source of authority, which is a possibility, denies justification by grace alone in the sense that the investigative judgment stays in there.
We become a cult if we take those two steps which deny the gospel.
So there you have it. Yeah, that's it for you. Evidence is that the leaders of the church are aware of the false doctrines. Now I have just one more evidence to give you, my own personal experience. Just before I had left the Seventh-day Adventist Church in 2018, there was one Adventist member whom I was very close with. I'm not going to say who that person is, and I don't want to say much so that it can be traced to the individual, right? And not just traced to the individual, I don't want it to be traced to the person who revealed the things that they revealed to this individual. So this individual that I was close with when I was in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, I told this person asked a Seventh-day Adventist pastor who they are very well acquainted with. You understand? And that pastor told them that yes, the leaders of the church, they do not buy into the doctrines. As a matter of fact, the pastor actually told the individual that they should hear me out in what I'm actually saying. You understand? And not only that, you know, the pastor actually commended me when the individual went to the pastor and told him the things that I was basically saying, my beliefs and so forth, the things that I discover. This pastor actually commended me and said, boy, this young man seems like he's very biblically astute. You understand? And in his messages that he sent to the person, which was then sent to me via WhatsApp, the pastor literally refuted every single one of Adventism teaching and said, yes, what the man is saying is true. You understand? And he even refuted the Sabbath too as well, you know. Right? When the person asks him about but he doesn't believe in the Sabbath, the pastor actually refuted the Sabbath in a subtle manner. And let me tell you how he refuted it. He refuted it by saying that, in other words, he was saying that, no, that's no biggie. That is why Jesus said, come unto me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And you know what he did? He put rest in capital letters. You understand? So he was indicating something to this individual in a subtle way without being explicit. You understand? Perhaps he wanted this person to go and search for themselves. You understand? Yes, so he didn't come outright with it, but rather did it in a subtle manner. But because this individual, compared to where I was at the time, that person was basically a novice to me when it come to the scriptures. So because the person was a novice, they couldn't even pick up that he was signaling a message to them. And this person isn't even aware of anti-Trinitarian, anti-Sabbatarian arguments. This individual wasn't aware of anti-Sabbatarian arguments. You understand? And most of you know that for anti-Sabbatarians, that text, "Come unto me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest," is a text that every anti-Sabbatarian will use. And from the minute he used that text to tell this individual something, that's when I know that he doesn't buy into the whole mandatory Sabbath thing either. And he put it in bold, in capital letters, the rest. You understand? I so wish I could say more about this, but I don't want the identity of these persons to be you understand? Next thing you know, they go and hunt them down. These SDA leaders and so forth go and hunt them down. I don't want that. I'm actually grateful to the person, the pastor, who said what he said. You understand? To the individual, because that was like validation for me. You understand? This individual, however, chose to refuse the things that I was actually saying to the person. As a matter of fact, this individual, instead of listening to what the pastor told them, you understand, to listen to me and hear what I have to say because I'm a very smart person, the person still opted for not listening. They choose to say, okay, I don't care to hear, I don't want to hear these things, I'm sticking with the Sabbath. Yeah, it's almost like a Desmond Ford, where Dr. Phil Johnson, when he was commenting on how Desmond Ford still held on to many of the Sabbatarians' teachings, and remarked by saying cultic hold is hard to break. You understand? That short clip there from Phil Johnson, I'm going to show you it. Right? So it shows you that this is a true saying, that cultic hold is very hard to break. Check it out.
There are websites that list many more of Mrs. White's failed prophecies. There are books that document her plagiarisms. Most objective people would simply write her off as a charlatan. And many of the conflicts within Seventh-day Adventism that took place, especially in the 1970s and 1980s, stemmed from the fact that virtually all the research into her history discredits her in one way or another, significantly. But cult loyalty is hard to break. And the end result of all those debates has been a renewal of loyalty to Mrs. White among practically everyone who has stayed in the Seventh-day Adventist movement. Seventh-day Adventist apologists have found various ways to defend or explain away or reinterpret or make excuses for the many discrepancies in Mrs. White's work. But the controversies have nevertheless left that movement shaken. If you want to study the various controversies of recent years, let me recommend an article titled The Shaking of Adventism by Jeffrey Paxton, P-A-X-T-O-N, The Shaking of Adventism. And another good place to start is the Wikipedia entry on Desmond Ford, D-E-S-M-O-N-D, Ford. Desmond Ford was a Seventh-day Adventist pastor in Australia who began in the 1970s to question some of the cult's core teachings. He became very close. He moved very close to evangelical orthodoxy, but he never really let go of some of Adventism's anomalies. He was excommunicated by the Adventists, and he's still alive today. He runs an independent ministry, and he's much closer to the truth than when he began, but he still rejects what Scripture teaches about hell. He still teaches the doctrine of soul sleep. He still holds to Seventh-day Sabbatarianism, and most significantly, although he acknowledges the huge errors in the writings of Ellen White, he declines to call her a false prophet. He says he regards her writings as pastoral but not canonical. That just shows you how hard it is to let go for a cult follower like this. And therein lies the difficulty of critiquing Seventh-day Adventism. Beliefs within that movement seem to be very pliable, even when they acknowledge, as all reasonable people are forced to do, they acknowledge that the roots of the movement were seriously tainted with erroneous claims, false prophecies, unfulfilled predictions. Nevertheless, they are loath to reject the tradition, and they're unwilling to leave the group. And that kind of blind, unshakable loyalty is one of the things that makes a cult like this so dangerous. A fear of leaving the movement behind. That is itself one of the main characteristics of all cults.
Now, why did I say this to you? Why did I bother to show you that clip? I show you that clip because I want you guys to understand that we former Adventists have to face the reality that many of them will die in error. You understand? Because cultic hold is very hard to break. No, I'm not saying that you should give up on your loved one who you want to get out of the cult, you know. You understand? You should still try to minister to them and show them truth, hoping that one day they'll come to see the light. But you have to face the reality that this may never happen. So what should you do in case such a thing happen, that they never come to the truth? You can continue to pray for them and try to find a way to ensure by whatever means that they have a fulfilling life in this lifetime, because some of the legalistic teachings can really hold them back, you know. You have to find a way to motivate them and to see to it that they're thriving in life, you understand, so they can still, despite the error, have a fulfilling life, you understand, and leave the rest to God, because many of them are going to die in error. You understand? You have to, when you come to grasp it with this, you'll understand that you don't waste time with them, because I don't waste time with them, you know, to argue and to debate with them. No, I don't join it with them, because I know that their heads are tough and the cultic hole is very hard to break. You understand? If it's a public debate, I'm game when it comes to that, because it can be a fruitful experience where it will be spread publicly, you understand, from social media, and people can see it and benefit from it. So if it's a public video, a public debate that's on video, I'll do it. But any other debate with them, I'm not into it. When a person is entrenched in error, trust me, it's not easy for them to be delivered from it. You understand? And I know this all too well. So I'm telling this to you guys, that do what you have to do, but bear in mind that many of them will die in error. You understand? It's a real sad reality. You understand, when one think about Adventism and how the leaders know and they are still feeding them the garbage that they do. But then again, when you remember about 1 Timothy chapter 4, when it says many will depart from the faith and their conscience will be seared with a hot iron, that means that they won't have any conscience. These people who are leading them astray, the text is actually telling that they won't have any conscience. That's how it is. So what I can advise that you do is that people ought to get to know the truth from very early in this day and age. We have to continue to preach the truth, because once the truth hits home in the hearts of people, then that's the only way we can defend against error. Because once you know the genuine, it's hard for you to get ensnared with the non-genuine. So let us continue to do what we do and pray and hope that the gospel will spread in its true light. Right, I end this video. Right, I do hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, comment where necessary, subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon so that you can receive notifications whenever I make new uploads. And last but not least, share this video with whom you know will benefit from an amazing video like this. Bye bye now.